Hey, welcome. My name is Lisa Duke. I'm a mindset coach for women over 40 who are looking for innovative approaches to weight loss. And my guest today is Beth Oreo. We're going to be talking about sex for women over 40. So we're just going to go there. And Beth is definitely an expert guest. So, Beth, can you introduce yourself and kind of tell the people why you know about this topic?
Okay, so I'm a doctor of physical therapy and I specialize in pelvic floor rehabilitation. And a big group of my patients are women who are perimenopausal to postmenopausal who are having difficulty with intercourse and enjoying sexual activity because of the changes that women's bodies go through as they approach menopause or go through menopause or have been through menopause. And that's a pretty significant change for our bodies. And we don't really get any education or assistance with it. And there's a lot that can be done. But when those estrogen levels drop and those hormones change, it causes some big changes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's really important. As women, most of us got some kind of warning, some kind of education about periods,
Yes,
about
that's it.
babies. Yeah. But after that, they forgot to warn us about things. And so you need to know about periods, you need to know about babies, but you also need to know, hey, some things in your body are going to be changing and that this happens probably in your 40s. I know I was certainly aware that menopause was a thing, but I thought this was something that happened to little old ladies like
Right,
Golden Girls,
right.
retirees. I did not know that this was something that happened to moms of teenagers, people, reaching the peak of their career. So that's, again, part of why I wanted to do this, just to let people know, like, if things are happening, it's not you. It's
Yeah, and
happening to you, but it's not your fault.
the changes with menopause are some people have very mild changes and symptoms, and other people it's just life altering and just wreaks havoc in their life. You know, everybody's heard of, oh, you get hot flashes and night sweats and maybe moodiness and things like that, but it can also be brain fog, and your hormone changes affect your muscles and tendons. So it can be achiness, and all of a sudden you have pain everywhere, and you're trying to exercise, and your tolerance is not, and your recovery is not what it used to be, and you don't know why. And you can't sleep, and it's not just the hot flashes, it's just straight up insomnia. And just irritability and just not feeling like yourself, not feeling any enjoyment of life. And all of these things can lead to depression. And, if your relationship is being affected by not being able to enjoy intercourse with your partner, then that can really affect your relationship. And then that can lead to a whole host of, psychosocial changes that just the whole thing just can snowball out of control. And, people, end up sometimes getting divorced just
Yeah.
because of the snowball effect of menopause.
Yeah. And maybe
And
not even realizing that that's what's going on.
right,
Yeah. Yeah.
right.
Which is why the awareness is so
Yeah,
important.
yes.
And my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, menopause frequently happens, say 45 to 55 is usually the age, and perimenopause can start as much as 10 years before. So this could
Sure.
even be happening, starting to happen for somebody 35, really
30s, sure.
35 and over. So if
Sure.
somebody 35 or older is starting to have some of those symptoms, obviously talk to your doctor. It could be something else. And
Mhm.
also it could be perimenopause and menopause. And
Yeah.
it really does affect people psychologically. I know there's a book called, what is it? Menopocalypse, something like that. Anyway,
Yeah.
and they talk about for a lot of people, even their oxytocin, that connection hormone, starts
Yes.
to go down.
Yeah.
So, and to some degree, it's a good thing. This is around the age when the kids are fleeing the, not fleeing, but moving out,
Hopefully.
right? Like flying out of the nest is what I was kind of trying to go for. They're leaving the nest. So you want more of a me focus and less of a we focus. But again, that can affect, I honestly think that is probably why I started this business, because my husband and I were running an IT consulting company, and I sort of woke up and thought like, oh my God, if he leaves me, I mean, theoretically I could go get a job, but that gets a little tricky as you get older too, right? Especially if you've been feral in the
Age
wild, running your
discrimination
own
is a real
business.
thing. Mhm.
Yeah, yeah. And you've been out there
Really
like
is.
running wild for so long. So yeah, it can affect you mentally in your connection, what you're prioritizing, how you're connecting to your family. And then, like you said, the physical aspect can affect the relationship, because if it's starting to get physically uncomfortable,
Mhm.
then you're less likely to want to have sex. So then, right, that can cause problems from
And
the guy's
there's a loss
perspective.
of libido. Yeah, I mean, and then
Yeah.
so if you don't really feel into it and then it hurts,
Yeah.
who wants to do it?
Exactly. Right. Meanwhile, your husband is probably seeing the doctor for, like, he's probably kind of going through the same thing, but he's getting testosterone either over the
A lot
counter or
of
from the
times they're not.
doctor, or,
I
oh, a lot
mean,
of times they're not. Yeah. Yeah.
a lot of times it just still works for forever. And they're, if they're healthy and they
Yeah.
don't have cardiovascular disease, they don't
Yeah.
have, plaque buildup in their arteries,
Yeah.
it can
It's like
still
a
work
Timex,
just perfectly fine into their
just
80s
keeps
with
ticking.
without skipping a beat. And so there is definitely
Yeah. And if there were an issue, they'd be getting
a
something
difference.
over the counter, prescription, right? Like, to me, as long as they're going to prescribe, I always call them boner pills, which is not the scientific term, but like,
Viagra.
thank you.
Viagra.
That's the word I was after. Yeah. If they're going to prescribe Viagra, they need to be talking to us about keeping all that going too.
Right.
And it was also a big surprise to me, because I was not concerned about menopause. I don't have kids, so I didn't have a lot of drama about the baby factory shutting down. I wasn't using it anyway.
Right.
That's totally fine. But there is kind of this cultural messaging about, I mean, this sounds awful, but the cultural messaging is that's kind of what women are for. Women are supposed
Yes.
to be hot,
Mhm.
young,
Yep.
sexually available, right? So you might not be making kids, but you're still supposed to be
Right.
interested in doing the things
Yeah.
that can lead to kids.
And
And
once you hit
so,
menopause, it's just throwaway.
yeah, it was a big, and it was a surprise to me how much there was cultural drama about, like, oh my God, if this is kind of our purpose in society and we're not able to do that, then do we
And
matter? What's our role?
now we have the cultural expectation is as you get older and you become, in your 50s, you're supposed to be a cougar. So you're supposed to be really hot and sexual that way. And that
Right.
doesn't align with menopause. You know, like I said, some women they skate through it, they don't really have any problems, but for a lot of women, it's a struggle.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but the good thing is that there are things that can be done to improve the situation, and there is more of an awareness developing now, but physicians are very slow to get with it as a whole. Some are great, really proactive about it, but it's not really their jam. They
Yeah.
treat medical problems. Menopause is a natural process, so
Mm,
they don't really it's not a disease. Physicians
mm,
treat diseases,
mm.
so you really have to look outside of that for a more comprehensive treatment approach. And, you know, unfortunately, that's just the way it is.
Yeah, that's really important to note too. So, first off, women knowing, like, hey, if there's things going on, and again, this is probably, we're talking about me today, apparently, but it's important to share. Um, because I'm a mindset coach, when I started having some changes down there, and because I thought I was way too young for it to be menopause, it didn't even cross my mind. My brain went to like, oh, and I think this is probably a lot of people, but especially because I'm a mindset coach, like, oh, there must be something going on, right? So the lady parts are not performing like they used to. There must be a mental or an emotional problem. And
Right.
when we tell our minds, hey, there's a problem, go find it, our mind will find something, right? So it'll blame husband, or it'll find a reason, which may or may not be like actually biologically correct. So I think that's important to know. And I, after talking to you and kind of realizing, oh, this is what this is a natural biological process. I went to my, I was going to use air quotes, but that's rude. I went to my doctor. She's got DR in front of her name.
Mhm.
And she said to me, I believe she's actually a physician's assistant, but it was my primary care doctor. It says doctor on her little name badge. And I asked her about it, and she said, oh, we didn't really talk about that in school. You'll have to talk to the doctor, right? The MD doctor who kind of supervises everything.
Right.
And I was floored that, and again, you've just explained why that wouldn't be covered, because, well, it's not a disease. But it just floored me because it only happens to half the population. If it happened to all guys, they would get it
Oh
instantly.
yeah.
Yeah.
They'd be right on it.
Yeah. And the fact that
Yeah.
she was so blithely unconcerned, my thought was, well, sister, give it another couple of years
Yeah,
and you'll
she's
be
like, you're
real
not going to
curious
die
about
from
it.
you're not going to die from it, so whatever.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
only about your quality of life and pleasure, so nobody cares in terms of the medical community, because you're not going to die from it. But this part of the medical community does care.
Yay.
Yeah,
Exactly.
so
Yeah. So tell us a little bit, right. And obviously we want people to see their MD in case it's something else, right?
yeah.
There's
So
other reasons for symptoms, but
yeah, and there are some symptoms that warrant further investigation. And so that's why it's always good to see a physical therapist and be evaluated, because they're, we evaluate for red flags that require further evaluation. Such as things like, postmenopausal, if any woman has bleeding postmenopausal, that always requires further follow-up.
mm,
Itching. If there's itching that is not relieved by using like a vaginal moisturizer, that requires follow-up. So
mm-hmm.
there's just certain types of discharge. There's things, so you don't want to just wing it on your own.
Yeah.
But there's a lot that can be done to improve the situation, but everybody's situation is a little bit different because everybody's symptoms are different and people have different problems. And we work as physical therapists, we are part of the medical model. We are trained in the same medical standards as physicians, and we work with physicians. So if we think that vaginal estrogen is appropriate for somebody, and then we, refer them to the appropriate prescribing practitioner who can give that to them and make that part of their treatment plan if the patient wants something like that. Not all patients are appropriate or want to go that route. Some patients don't want hormones, and that's okay. Not everybody has to have hormones. It's not mandatory. That is the first go-to all physicians do, because that's what physicians do. Physicians can only prescribe medications, give you an injection, or cut you open. That is their toolbox. That's it. So it's an option for some patients, but it's not mandatory. But if your first stop is the physician, that you get the impression that, well, if you don't do vaginal estrogen, you're not getting any better. And that's not the case. So some patients who maybe have a cancer history and maybe can't have vaginal estrogen, they just are kind of left thinking, oh, this is it. I'm doomed. I'm never going to enjoy intercourse again. And that's just not the case. Everybody can be made better. We can't all be made 20 again, but
and we don't all want to.
And we don't necessarily
that
want
carries
to.
its own set of drama.
That's right.
Yeah.
But there's a lot to be done with simple things, such as using a vaginal moisturizer. This is one company, Good Clean Love, that makes a great product. And there's another company called Bonafide. They make a lot of great products, including products to help stimulate libido. And they're all natural. And physicians recommend these products. Physicians that are really, a little bit more proactive for their patients recommend these products. So they're not, crazy,
hippie alternate. Yeah.
Yeah, they're not out there. These are really good, well-researched, good products. But vaginal moisturizers are no different. Well, they are different, but the concept is no different than, moisturizer you put on your skin. As we get older, our skin gets drier, and our vaginal tissues, as the estrogen goes down, they become more fragile and less hydrated. And so, that's what vaginal estrogen does, is improves the hydration, but kind of from the inside out, because it's absorbed and kind of, replaces your estrogen. But the vaginal moisturizers just moisturize and therefore make the tissues more hydrated, therefore more supple, more resilient, and more comfortable. And it just becomes, you make it just part of your daily routine, and it is a game changer. I mean, patients often, they're like, oh my gosh, why didn't anybody ever tell me about this? And because doctors treat diseases. They don't do, it's more like a wellness type of treatment. Doctors don't do wellness.
Yeah.
So most anyway.
Yeah.
And, so it's just something that you just need to do as part of your wellness care, self-care. But nobody knows about it.
Yeah.
Because,
well, sorry, I get excited.
No, yeah.
I get excited. I want to jump in and talk.
It's a simple thing.
Yeah. And I think it's so important, the way you explain it is like, hey, just like you use a moisturizer on your face, you're using a moisturizer on your body, in your body. And that's really
body.
Exactly. I think it really helps reduce any kind of like stigma, shame, discomfort, drama. Yeah. This is just a moisturizer, just like what you do for your face, you do it for other places, and it works the same way, right? Part of the reason we moisturize our faces is to keep everything like fresh and happy looking and feeling, and same thing downstairs as well. So let me skip back a little bit, because you mentioned talking to a PT, but I'm guessing and you tell me, I could be wrong, but we probably don't want to go and pull our pants down in front of every physical therapist out there. Absolutely. Is this something that, like, if I'm doing like rehabilitation for my shoulder surgery, I don't necessarily
have any idea.
Okay. Yeah. Yes. So we want a special kind of physical therapist.
Yes. Only a pelvic floor physical therapist would have any idea what we're talking about. It's an additional postgraduate training and credentialing that is not taught in school. It requires training postgraduate. So when I went to school, they didn't even go over it at all. It just wasn't even discussed. That's how old I am. And now it's touched upon in school, so that the therapists have a little bit of familiarity and can at least maybe screen a patient that they might see in an orthopedic clinic and say, you should see a pelvic floor therapist, but they're by no means qualified to treat patients.
Gotcha. So if you go in to rehabilitate your shoulder, keep your pants on.
Yes.
This is one of our takeaways.
Absolutely.
Unless he's really good looking and you're single, in which case consenting adults, whatever. But all right. So pelvic floor therapist. And so let's talk a little bit about what you do, what can be done. So we talked about moisturizer is a good first stop, and that's available over the counter. And I think it's worth mentioning that you and I don't sell these products. We're just trying to hook a sister up. We're not. So moisturizer is a good first stop over the counter, very affordable. Another stop would be your primary care physician. If you did want to learn more or Google, you can always Google things. But in terms of getting a prescription, primary care, or your OBGYN would be able to prescribe.
Primary cares, some are knowledgeable, some are not. It all depends on their practice.
Gotcha.
But usually and we also, like, I in particular work with a virtual an online sexual medicine clinic. So I can also refer patients to that clinic if they don't have anything that I feel like they need a in-person visit. If they, say they have an OBGYN, they've, been seen, there's no red flags, and their problem is strictly of a sexual nature, sexual dysfunction, strictly a pelvic floor problem, and I don't see anything from a medical perspective, I can refer them to them, and they offer a really focused care on that issue. But if there's other issues, the physical therapist can really make good referrals because we're knowledgeable about who in the local area is good for what.
Yeah.
For what
Yeah.
patient
That's
needs.
really important.
Yeah.
And then with that referral to the doctor, yes, sometimes it might be all over hormones, but we kind of talked about localized hormones too.
Mhm.
So if somebody does have some issues where they don't want to, aren't able to take, oral hormones that would go all throughout your body, there are some localized things that you can talk to your doctor about. And again, to try to like address any kind of shame or stigma, if you've been on birth control, you've taken hormones. So this is
Yeah.
not like something new and shocking and shameful and my body is breaking down. This is just a new twist on something most of us have been doing for a long time, correct?
Right. Mm-hmm.
Cool. All right. So how does somebody find a good, well, let's talk about you first. Are you only seeing patients in kind of the Treasure Coast area locally, or can you see people online? How does that work?
I can. I'm actually in the process of developing a virtual practice as well, so that I can see patients who, I'm located in Port St. Lucie, and I see patients from Vero to Stewart, basically will come see me. I've had patients come from as far as Okeechobee, which is quite a ride.
Yeah.
So I want to develop an online presence and be able to do virtual visits so that I can see patients in rural areas such as Indiantown, Okeechobee, where there's just no pelvic floor therapist at all, and be able to offer those services to them. So that's my
And
goal. I'm hoping to develop that in the next couple months.
for a percentage of what you do, you can do it online. And from a
Yeah.
licensing perspective, would they have to be inside the state of Florida?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. So if they're watching this and they're not in Florida, then they would probably want to try to find a pelvic floor, a physical therapist with pelvic floor expertise, which hopefully
Yes.
they could find by referral from their doctor's office. If not,
Well,
what,
there's
Google
actually 3 resources for looking up for like provider lookups.
Yeah.
One is through the American Physical Therapy Association. They have a provider lookup so only people who are credentialed are listed there. The other one is through Herman and Wallace. So the 2 credentialing bodies are the American Physical Therapy Association and Herman and Wallace. And so they both have provider lookups. And the other one is Pelvic Guru, which is an international resource and association of pelvic floor physical therapists. They also have a provider lookup. So you just Google those, easy to find. You just put in like American Physical Therapy, pelvic floor provider lookup, and it would come up, any of those. And then you would just put in your zip code, and it would, and whatever radius you wanted to put in of miles from your zip code, and it would tell you who's listed in your area.
Gotcha. All right. And I would guess for a lot of people, especially early in their 40s, moisturizer, maybe some local hormones, some emotional support, you're good. What about people that are further into this? What are the other kind of things that can be done, other kind of treatments that are available?
So what happens a lot of times is people develop a pelvic floor dysfunction because the easiest way to describe it is, if I come over and I poke you in the eye, you're going to close your eye. If I poke you in the eye again, you're going to close your eye. If I go like this to you, you're going to close your eye before I poke you in the eye. So that's what happens with intercourse in the pelvic floor. If it's painful once, okay, painful twice, after a while, pelvic floor sees a penis coming, it just goes up, no, and it just shuts. You're only going to let someone poke you in the eye,
so many times
before you just close your eye.
Yeah. No matter how enthusiastic they are about it, at a certain point, your body is just going to be like, nope.
Yeah. It's just going to be like, penis out. Nope.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then after a while, what happens is it just stays closed. It just tightens because it's now developed this reaction and this pain stimulus, and it just becomes overactive, and so now it may just become tight.
Yeah.
And because of the estrogen decrease, it's already prone to that problem. So then there's treatments that we do with dilators, wands for home programs, so that patients can work on relaxing their pelvic floor, stretching, breathing, meditation, all different kinds of things. But that all needs to be assessed by the therapist. And a tight pelvic floor is a weak pelvic floor, but you can't strengthen it until you get it back to a normal length first. And then other people, their pelvic floors, just from the lack of estrogen, just get very, very weak. And so they may develop urinary incontinence and urgency and frequency, where they're running to the bathroom. So maybe, maybe they're not having pain with intercourse, but maybe they're not having much pleasure, and they're not able to have an orgasm, and their pelvic floor, and they're leaking urine. So there's kind of two ends of the spectrum. You can have too much tone, and you can have not enough tone. And so either one can have problems with orgasm, not having one, or having pain with one. So that's no fun.
No.
Yeah. So, it's one, if you're having pain with intercourse and then you can't have an orgasm and you don't have any libido, like, who the heck wants to do it?
Right.
Yeah. So all of those things can be addressed in pelvic floor therapy. But there's, almost always dysfunction in the pelvic floor, because it is reliant on estrogen to some degree, but it can be treated, even without estrogen. Because you can make it stronger, you can make it relax and make it lengthen, and then make it stronger. So these things can all be addressed with or without hormones.
Yeah. What about hysterectomies? I've had a couple of friends that, for whatever reason, have had that done. I would assume they still have a pelvic floor, but things kind of rearrange. How does that come into play?
So hysterectomies can be done where they just take the uterus out, or they take the uterus and the ovaries. So if they take the ovaries, then you're in menopause, full menopause. So then you got that whole scenario we just already went through there. And then you have menopause, but then you also have structural change. So they've gone in and they've kind of, think of things being stacked one on top of the other. And now they've kind of disrupted the structural integrity of things.
Like Jenga.
Exactly. Jenga, exactly. And and even though the bladder does not sit on top of the uterus, everything ties together. So the fascia, the ligaments, they all hold each other up. So it is Jenga. So that's why there is an association. And also, it's a trauma to the pelvic floor, a surgery like that, whether it's done through the abdomen or it's done vaginally, it's a trauma to the pelvic floor. And anytime you traumatize the pelvic floor, it doesn't usually bounce back on its own. And so there's problems. And then what happens is you develop urinary problems. Most people develop urinary problems. That's usually the sign, or pain, dysfunction with sexual activity, decreased ability to orgasm, or pain with intercourse, all of those things. So then same thing, if you have just the uterus and you still have your ovaries, so then you still have your estrogen, if you're not, if you've not hit menopause or perimenopause, but you still have that structural, disruption, that Jenga problem. So it just, it's just not great. It's not great. Hysterectomies are not great. They're not great, and they're so common. It really, I always joke that it was the medical answer to anything that was, years ago, especially any problem that a woman had, like, oh, you have migraines, oh, we'll give you a hysterectomy, like whatever is wrong with you, like, oh, we'll just cut out your uterus, like, you're done having kids, we'll just take it out, like, you still need it. Because
it's still doing some stuff. If nothing else, it's holding the other Jenga pieces up. So that's something that might be a predecessor to them working with a pelvic floor therapist.
And a lot of women, it's funny, a lot of women have problems and they don't know it, because women are conditioned to just suck it up, basically. And so it's a cultural just a cultural, vibe that, I've had women come in and for whatever problem, and well, do you have any pain with intercourse? No, no. And I'm like, are you sure? Because I'm thinking based on their other symptoms, you probably do, and
Mm-hmm.
are you sure? You sure? It's like totally comfortable. You totally enjoy it, and they're like, yeah, it's fine. It's fine. Like, okay. And then next visit, they come back and they're like, you know what? Yeah, I do have pain with intercourse. Yeah, now that I think about it, now that I've did it, now that you like put the thought in my head and
Yeah.
I had sex again, and then I'm like, yeah, you know what? I love this. I'm not enjoying this.
Yeah.
But women are so conditioned to just that it's not about us. It's all about the man.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of
And
us are
so,
kind of disconnected, not just from our emotions, but from sensation as well. Like, this is one of the things I work on with my clients. Like, okay, so you're not hungry and you want to lose weight. Why are you eating? They're like, well,
yeah,
dang, I don't know. That's a good question. So starting to
right,
tune into the sensation of hunger,
right.
starting to tune into the sensation of what's going on down there and
Too
how does that
focused on
feel?
everybody else and not
Yes,
focused
yes.
on ourselves enough.
Yeah,
And yeah, and intercourse is a big thing. Women
yeah.
are conditioned from the time they're little girls that it's all about the man, all about the man. I mean, I have to tell women like, your clitoris has one job, orgasm. That's it. It's the only role. Use it. It's, like, women will come in and say, oh, I can't have an orgasm with intercourse. I'm like, well, that makes you normal because 80% or better of women can't have an orgasm with intercourse. That's not what the vaginal canal is for.
Boom.
It's not for orgasm. The clitoris is
Mic
for
drop.
orgasm.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, they thought there was something wrong with them. I'm like, no,
Yeah.
that's totally normal.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so good. That was worth the price of admission right there, y'all.
Exactly.
So one other topic, and then I want to wrap up. Let's talk a little bit about the mind-body connection, because this is one of those things that I think on paper, Western medicine does not acknowledge, does not recognize. And yet in practice, a lot of practitioners, if you give them a glass of wine, get them out of the office, they'll be like, oh yeah, girl, like, we see this with this, we see this with this. So let's talk a little bit about mind-body things that can affect pelvic floor and sexual wellness.
So I treat a lot of patients with pelvic pain.
Mm-hmm.
And all of those patients have pain with intercourse. And all of those patients have stressful jobs where they're being overworked, where they're working 60 plus hours a week, and they can't, like, they feel like they're just treading water. Like they can't barely breathe. Stress is a huge player in what happens with our bodies. And there's a phrase to describe chronic or pelvic pain. They'll call it a headache in the pelvis, because when you get when you're stressed, a lot of people will get a headache, a muscle tension headache, because they're scrunching their face, and which is making the scalp muscles scrunch up, and you'll get it, and your neck, you're doing this, and you
The
get a
stress
headache.
turtle.
And we're not at all surprised. Yeah, we're like, yeah, I have a headache because I'm so stressed and I'm hunched over my computer working, and we're not at all surprised. But it's the same thing in the pelvis. It's the same thing. It goes here, or it goes here, or it does both. But I never have a patient who has pelvic pain come in and go, oh yeah, I'm a laid back person. I'm totally chill. I'm like a surfer type. Nothing bothers me. I have a totally relaxed job. I have a totally relaxed life. That does not happen. Those things go together, so our bodies, there's a book called The Body Keeps the Score. And that it's just true. Our body holds our trauma, and our body is our barometer of our stress and our pain and our emotional trauma, and just it's the barometer of our emotions and our anything going on with our psychology.
Yeah. So stress now, which is basically all of my clients and all of my friends,
Yeah,
sexual
everybody.
trauma, that kind of thing in your past. what about, and this is really out there, but religious trauma can be an aspect
Oh,
of this too,
yes.
right?
Oh, yes. Yes. I've had several patients that, they grew up in very strict religious households where there was a lot of body shaming, that women are, your own sex's only purpose is to have children, is to create children, and women are dirty and sexual thoughts are bad, and you're, just a lot of shaming.
Mm,
And you need to keep your legs closed, and you have to wear skirts. And when you're trying to keep your legs closed all the time, that's driving a lot of tension into your pelvic
mm.
floor, because the muscles on the inside of the thighs are directly connected to the pelvic floor. So if you're trying to keep your legs crossed all the time or held together all the time, that's going to give you pelvic pain right there, not to mention the psychological trauma of being told
Wow.
that you're dirty and bad and shameful, and then you're told that your whole time, and then it's like, oh, get married and now have sex with this guy, whenever
On
he wants it.
demand, whenever.
Yeah, on
Yeah. Yeah.
demand.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
You're like,
Yeah,
wait, I thought it was dirty and bad and shameful. Like, oh, it
yeah,
is, except in,
yeah,
these
yeah.
three,
Right. But
circumstances
now
or
you're
whatever.
supposed to enjoy it because that makes his pleasure better.
Yeah.
It's just a complete conflict and just ridiculous.
Yeah. It makes sense though. All of that clenching just makes things physically tight. And then you have the psychological, the emotional all tied
Yeah.
in together. So, so good. So, all right. Anything big that we missed? Any parting thoughts that you want to share?
Just that, women need to be stewards of their own bodies and not be looking to the traditional medical community to guide their health in terms of their they're related to their being as a female and as a woman, because the medical model is a failure for women across the board, regardless whether it's heart disease or sexual health or anything. It's just
Mhm.
it's just a failure, and every statistic and study will tell you that.
Mm.
So, women need to, be proactive and be their own advocates and do their research, and find the practitioner who will help you. Most of my patients that I see for pelvic pain have been suffering for an average of about 2 years, and have seen 5 different doctors who've told them everything from it's all in your head to you need surgery. I mean, if that doesn't make any sense at all,
That's the
so
gamut.
yeah. And then, then they finally get to pelvic floor therapy, where they're told, oh, this is the problem. This is what we're do to make it better. And you're not crazy. And this all makes sense. And
Mhm.
it's, but people suffer for so long because they're going to doctors who, like I said, just they don't know. Doctors as a rule the most of them don't know anything about these problems.
Yeah,
They don't know
exactly.
anything about, they get a 10-minute lecture in med school, maybe.
Mhm.
They
And
just don't know about it.
and I think you and I are on the same page. We're not like 100% anti-Western medicine. I always tell
No,
people, right? Like if I fall over, please take me to the ER. Like they're
absolutely.
really good setting bones, surgery. There is a place for it. Um, However, there is also sometimes an arrogance that
Mhm.
comes with that, right?
Yes.
That
And I
comes
have
from an
some
IT
specialists.
background. Huh?
Yeah, I have some specialists that I work with that are just absolutely amazing,
Yes.
that
Yes.
are, medical doctors who are physicians that are just, absolutely fabulous, that I refer
Yeah.
my patients to all the time.
Yeah.
So it's not like I am not anti-medical establishment at all,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I think, insurance for one thing, has just driven the overall quality of medical care down,
Mm-hmm.
and physicians don't have time to stay up on like the broader aspect of what's happening. They can just barely keep up with their specific field. They
Mm-hmm.
just can't know everything. They're just,
Yeah. Yeah.
one person. They
Yeah.
can't know everything. And so, and medicine has gotten specialized and specialized and specialized, just so specialized that they just can't know everybody's specialty.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was going to say, I see it as somewhat similar to IT, that because they're really good, because they're really well paid, because they have a lot of knowledge, if there's a problem and they don't see it or they can't immediately, come up with a solution, there's a tendency to blame the user.
Right.
Right? Like
Yeah.
everything, your
Yeah.
lab work is good. I looked in there, it looks
Right.
fine. It must
Yeah.
be your fault.
It's your fault. It's in your head. It's all in your head. It's
Exactly.
crazy.
And so
Go see a
just like with
psychiatrist.
IT, we want
Yeah.
to look for the people that are
Yeah.
willing to listen, that have a broader perspective,
Yeah.
that are
Mhm.
curious, that are really, and and it's, again, it's not to blame them. It's the model that a lot of them are not happy either. It's the
Right.
model that the
Oh,
industry
yeah.
is in right
They
now.
hate
So
insurance companies. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. So, all right, well, let's go ahead and wrap up. If somebody is in the state of Florida, they have some things going on in that department, they want to talk to you, they want to learn more, how can people get in touch with you?
Probably the easiest is my website, which is BethOreoDPT.com.
Gotcha. And it's spelled like the cookie.
Yep.
So it's
Yep.
exactly the way you think it's spelled. That's how it's spelled.
Yep.
And if you are a woman over 40 who is looking for an innovative approach to weight loss, something different than what you've tried in the past, something that aspires to give you long-term results, I would love to work with you. And you can schedule a free initial consultation to see if you're a fit for my program. The best place to do that is lisaduke.net/schedule. I also, and this may not be forever, but at least until June of 2023, I'm running a free group. So it's a weight loss support group, and we're going to do EFT tapping completely free. It is going to be the last Monday of the month at 6 p.m. Eastern, with the exception of May, because the last Monday of the month is a holiday. So it'll be a week earlier. So check that out, lisaduke.net/group. And we hope that you get whatever help you're looking for.
That's right.
All right. Thank you so much, Beth. You have a good day.
Thank you.